Ahead of NBA All-Star Weekend, we're joined on the SBJ Sports Media Podcast by someone who needs little introduction, but I'm going to give him a little bit of one anyways. ESPN NBA insider, co-host of the Hoop Collective podcast, and two-time New York Times best-selling author, Brian Windhorst. Brian, welcome into the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So before we get to All-Star Weekend, I want to rewind a week or so, just after we heard the bells chime at midnight on Sunday. A trade that many have labeled, the most shocking in NBA history. That went down. I've spoken to a few of your NBA colleagues, and the first reaction from most of them was, ain't no way this is happening. How did you first hear about that Luka AD trade, and what was your initial reaction?
I got a very brief heads up just with internally because we knew it was coming, but I mean very brief with less than a minute. It's very unusual that we have no idea a trade is coming. Typically, if we have no idea a trade is coming, it's a very minor trade where, it's something that we wouldn't cross our desks. Most of the time, we have an idea that a trade is coming, and maybe we don't always know the terms, and maybe it doesn't rise to the level where we could report it because, for various reasons. Coming out of the clear blue sky is unusual. Coming out of the clear blue sky with superstar players is unheard of in this day and age. And I actually, once I digested it, and even to this day, but 12 hours in, I wasn't so surprised that I got to the point where I could understand why the Mavericks would want to trade Luka. What I have not gotten to this day to digest is the way in which they did it. Not opening up to the whole market. I can get myself to understanding why they didn't do that. But then once I accept that they had their reasons to trade Luka, and once I accept they wanted to do the deal with the Lakers because they wanted Anthony Davis, I can't accept that they weren't able to get all of the things that the Lakers could have offered. And it wasn't just like not just getting the cherry, like they didn't get the gravy. They didn't get, they obviously got the steak, they got AD, but they didn't get what you often see in trades like this, where teams will negotiate every little thing. And so the Lakers had so much left over that they were able to go make another trade with just their leftover pieces that they should have sent for AD. That trade got rescinded, but I think that's the lasting thing for someone who covers the league like me.
I like your analogy on the steak. I definitely agree. I don't think there was, any asparagus on the side or anything on that deal. Just the steak, no toppings. Brian, I recognize that professional sports is entertainment essentially, but stepping back and looking at the press and podcast coverage of this trade in particular, and just maybe the NBA overall these days, is there too much attention on what goes on outside the lines versus maybe the play on the court?
I would just say my feel is that the balance is a little bit off, that I think that we should balance it a little bit better. There are a lot of times there on an average NBA night where there are absolutely amazing performances in some of these games. For example, this week there was a game where the Warriors played in Milwaukee, and Giannis didn't play in the game. And so right off the bat, you're like, man, that's the game takes less excitement. I think Lillard had 48 points and Steph had 38. The talking points coming out of that game were all about Jimmy Butler and how he fits with the Warriors and whatnot. So my viewpoint is not that we shouldn't talk about Jimmy Butler. I mean, there's a lot of interest in that. There's a stretch in that game where there was incredible shot making back and forth between Steph and Lillard. And this game in and of itself is not really that remarkable, Austin. It's not that I think it should be all one way or all the other way. I think the balance is a little bit off. I think that there should be some more celebration of the night to night greatness that we see in the league. Like when I hear people talk about the state of the game not being good or being boring, it's an instantaneous indicator to me that the person who's saying that isn't really watching the games. Whenever I hear that, I kind of turn off because I'm really not interested in what that person keeps saying, because I guess it's an individual taste thing. I guess somebody could say, look, I just don't like shot making. I would prefer a different style. And I guess I can account for that. But as somebody who's covered the league for 22 years, I reject the notion that the game isn't being played at an incredible level in the NBA. And I think part of the reason is there's not enough celebration over the night to night greatness that happens. I mean, we show the highlights. It's not celebrated as much as it is, in my opinion, it should be. I'm not saying that the transaction stuff isn't important for driving excitement around the league. You can't play games 24 hours a day. But that's my opinion, and my opinion doesn't matter that much.
I would totally disagree with that. I think you drive a lot of the NBA conversation, so it's an important opinion. I want to look ahead a little bit to this weekend's NBA All Star game. New format. We're talking about tournament style, 4 teams across 3 games. The winner for each game will be the first team to reach or surpass 40 points. Do you think fans are going to care about the change in format, care about NBA All Star weekend? Can this event be saved?
I mean, this format is, they're really reaching. And now there's going to be, Kevin Hart is going to apparently tell jokes, or I don't exactly know what the plan is. It's kind of, to me, when I hear Kevin Hart's going to be the MC, it kind of makes me think of like the N1 mixtape.
Or the celebrity game, yeah.
Yeah, where like the guy, is sort of providing a commentary. I don't know how there can be a commentary by Kevin Hart and a commentary by the play-by-play, and I don't know how that's going to work, but I'm sure they've figured it out. All-Star weekend, but specifically the All-Star game has long, long, long been style over substance. It's lost me as a viewer, in all honesty, and I'm not excited about this.
Do you think the format needs to be USA versus the world? That seems like what fans want to see.
It's not addressing the real problem. The real problem is that the players aren't invested in the game. And so what they're doing is they're trying everything they possibly can to get the players invested in the game. And Adam Silver has, it's not for lack of trying. Like it's not that Adam's just throwing his hands up. He's really, really tried. He's tried different formats. He tried the Elam ending, which the first year of the Elam ending, which was in 2020 in Chicago, I was totally engaged by the fourth quarter of that game. I thought it was great basketball. I really loved it. But unfortunately it just wouldn't last. And last year he tried like this whole thing appealing to the history of basketball in Indiana, and he brought back like veterans for, command the respect of the young players. And they spoke to them and did like media tours to apply pressure. And then they still didn't care. Really, the format doesn't matter if the players aren't invested in the outcome. I guess I'll be open minded, but we spend a lot of time talking about who the starters are. There's 15 starters. There's a lot being asked out of the players now. They're asking the players to be invested in a lot of different things. And even on All-Star weekend, their investment in the game itself has been sacrificed. It is what it is. I don't think there's anything more I can say.
LeBron, Steph, KD, they're nearing the end of their careers. There are stars right behind them. We see them every night. Luka, Joker, Giannis, Wemby. But the common denominator with those 4 in particular are they aren't U.S. stars. Does the NBA have any sort of successor or star attraction issue?
Again, if you watch the games, I don't think that there should be. There was a time, when the thing I would say is when LeBron came into the league, it was right after Jordan left. It was the year after he left, and it's hard to remember now. There was some interest in LeBron coming out of the gate, more than your average number 1 pick, but it wasn't like the league put him on national TV 25 times. He was on some. He didn't make the All-Star game as a rookie, which irritated him a lot at that time. But part of the reason is that there wasn't, the coaches didn't look at him as an all-star. There was some of that back then, is my point. There was excitement over LeBron and Carmelo Anthony. Dwayne Wade, like he had no impact at all in the early part of his career. It wasn't until the end of his first year a little bit. I mean, he had some name recognition because of the Marquette run, but it wasn't like they were like, oh, these guys are ready to take over. There was that fear back then. Yes, there is not another, it doesn't appear to be another LeBron ready to go, but I don't think there was another Jordan ready to go. And the league ended up going through a period of a little bit of a downturn and then surged very strongly with LeBron, with Durant, with Steph. As I've gotten older and spent more time in the league, there's something that David Stern used to say that I've become a real big believer in, which is believe in the greatness of the game. The future will be taken care of by the greatness of the game. And, that includes the greatness of the players. Whenever I hear like some sort of dire prediction, like, oh my gosh, no one's going to watch the league, or the NBA is, got big problems or whatever, I go back to David Stern, who was around the NBA for 40 years. And he said, trust the greatness of the game. Yes, he didn't know that Magic and Larry were coming, but he knew that basketball was a game that a lot of people were interested in and there was great talent in it. No, he didn't know that Michael Jordan was going to be what he was when he was coming out of college, but he believed in the greatness of the game. And so I will take David Stern's advice and believe in the greatness of the game. I do think that there is a strong attempt from the league to focus on Wembanyama, and I think he's a potentially transformational player. He's a different type of player. He's not like Jordan, Kobe, and LeBron. He plays a lot differently. But again, I don't know how, if you watch him play and aren't transfixed, you're not a fan of the game. Yes, we're headed for a transition period where there could be a downturn, but I'm going to believe in David Stern.
I got to see Wembanyama for the first time here in Charlotte when he took on the Hornets last Friday. Yeah, it is a unique experience watching him play. Like seeing him block shots without, like, on NBA players without even have to get off the ground. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is he is a freak of nature. It is, and then see him step out and hit threes like that. I've never seen a player like that before.
Yeah, I think the other night he made three 30-footers in the first quarter. I reject the concept that that's not going to be interesting. The casual fan may not totally get it yet, but there were people who, if I told you when Steph Curry came into the league that he was going to be a transformational player, obviously, especially you living in Charlotte, you may have believed that. But
we saw him a little bit more, I guess. There were a lot of Davidson clips going around the Charlotte area. Yeah,
right. But there was a lot of people who were highly skeptical of him. I mean, six people passed on him, or I guess maybe five because the Wolves passed on him twice famously. He was no slam dunk guarantee. And his first couple of years was not an impact player. He was good, but he was not an impact player. So, and then the greatness of the game took over.
All right, Brian, I want to wrap things up with a couple of quick hitter, short answer sort of questions to get us out of here. Would you move the 3-point line back?
No.
I mean, obviously, we've talked about the All-Star game itself really needing some work. We'll see how this year works. Do you have another favorite NBA All-Star weekend event?
Austin, I probably get in trouble for saying this.
That's fair.
I could let it all go. I avoid it like the plague. It is very good for NBA business. A lot of NBA business gets done there. I recognize that. I recognize that it's a lot of stuff that happens for players from the marketing standpoint that gets done there. As a fan, I have no interest in All-Star Weekend. I'm sorry to say that. I shouldn't be saying it because I will definitely get blowback.
A non-NBA question for you. You're a native Northeast Ohio. The Browns look to be headed to the suburbs. Is it the right move for the NFL team?
Absolutely not. No. Crazy decision. Not only that, I'm a resident. When I lived in Cleveland for years, I lived in the community where they want to build the stadium. I know the piece of land extremely well. It's the site of an old Ford plant. I understand the concept because there's three highways that come together there, and it's a giant piece of land that is not being used. They'll change the geography a little bit. On a basic level, it is across the street from the airport. And the idea of putting a major state, where do they put airports, Austin? They put airports way the hell out because that's where they have, they can put the land and there's almost nothing attractive by the airports. It's one of the things about America. What do? You fly into the airport and then you've got this slog to get where everybody wants to be. Airports by design are put in not desirable places because nobody wants to be by the airport. I wanted to be by the airport because I use the airport all the time. And if you saw my neighborhood, you wouldn't say that would be a place that you would want to draw people in. I do not support it at all. I think it's ridiculous.
Well, we're going to have to get this clip over to the NFL Live, folks. Sounds like they're going to have you on, to talk more about the subject.
Yeah, well, I'm sure everybody in Cleveland will tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't live there anymore, but I did live in Brook Park, Ohio for years, and I do have some understanding of the idea of putting a stadium there.
Well, ESPN NBA insider Brian Windhorst, thank you for taking the time to dish on all things NBA, and thank you for coming on the SBJ Sports Media Podcast.
Thank you for having me.